Dog Works Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
Start your day tomorrow with The Daily Dog with Michelle Forto, the morning podcast on Dog Works Radio. Apple Podcast reviewer Patty Christensen calls it funny, smart, and filled with all the info I want to know about dogs. I love this show. Wake up with The Daily Dog. Available on Dog Works Radio on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your shows.
Dog Works Radio Network presents Mushing Radio, hosted by Robert Forto. Mushing Radio is about dog-powered sports, living in the Great White North, and mushing. Visit our website at mushingradio.com. Here is your host, Robert Forto.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Robert Forto, and you're listening to Mushing Radio here on KVRF 89.7 in the Mat-Su Valley. RadioFreePalmer.org is our live streaming site. You can find all of our episodes over on DogWorksRadio.com. Be sure to check us out on social media, searching for the same name, DogWorks Radio. And today I am joined by a couple from Prescott, Arizona. They are Brad and Sarah Kassing, and they're going to be heading over to Sweden in a couple of months to race in the Dryland Championships. Guys, how's it going?
Excellent.
Yeah, quite well.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. If you will, please, Sarah, starting first, could you introduce yourself and tell our listeners who you are and what you're all about, please?
Sure. So my name is Sarah Kassing, and so I am a veterinarian in Arizona. So I work at an emergency clinic. I'm originally from Minnesota, and that's kind of where my interest in sled dog sports began. I just kind of grew up kind of a little bit around it and began volunteering for races growing up, and then kind of stuck with it, and then ended up moving west, and kind of my participation in volunteering just kind of went dormant for a little bit, and then it kind of was reignited a few years ago. And then, long story short, we kind of ended up diving in head first ourselves into the world of sprint racing.
Very good. And Brad?
Again, we kind of got into these dog sports by accident. So I'm my day job is a chemistry teacher, but always was really into like backpacking and hiking and biking with dogs. And Sarah talked me into getting a sled dog for kind of my adventure buddy. And once we realized that a sled dog was not just a high endurance dog, that they really had a passion for running, it kind of led us down this road into these dryland sports, and now sled sports too.
So to start off first, how many dogs do you guys have now? And if it's multiple, when did that process start of getting your first dog and then carrying on from there?
Sure. So I guess since we met, we just kind of had our non-sled dog house pets, more or less, that were kind of our adventure buddies. And then it kind of began in 2007 when our current dogs were getting a little bit older. And as Brad kind of alluded to, we're kind of trying to decide what our next one was going to be. And we were kind of looking for a dog to keep up with us on the trails. I'm an avid trail runner, Brad's an avid mountain biker, and we both are pretty into a little bit of backpacking. And
we'd also do things like canyoneering, which is a sport that is known much up that way, but it's where you're like rappelling through canyons and swimming. And so, we were doing sports where we actually had our dogs like on rappelling harnesses, lowering them down like 100-foot cliffs into water. And so we were pretty active into outdoor things, and Sarah's experience kind of just led us to trying out a sled dog just for a really strong, fast, high-endurance dog.
Right. So we started with a puppy from Ed Streeper in Minnesota, and as I started filming with her and started contact with her, we kind of saw her potential, and we fell in love with it, and next thing we knew, we kind of went back and ended up getting her litter mate, and then a third dog from Ed at that point. So we had 3 initially for quite a while. And then this year, we actually decided to take it a step further. Brad was doing quite well with races on snow in 4-dog classes that we decided to go ahead and get our 4th dog. And so...
fifth dog.
Well, 5th.
Yeah,
yep.
So I show up to my first race in February?
Yes. January.
January. I think at that point, I think I'd spent like an hour and a half on a sled total, maybe a couple hours.
Oh my goodness!
So I had no sled experience at all.
Or what was that?
So I had like no sled experience at all, and I show up to this race. I bought like an old dry rotted sled, and was just kind of really welcomed into the community and did pretty well with those 3 dogs. And then one of the mushers, set us up with another puppy. So now we've actually got 5 sled dogs when we kind of just set out to have one strong adventure buddy. But it's just been great. We're just getting more and more into it and having a lot of fun.
Your story is like so many of us in the mushing world. We want to have one dog, and before long we have a kennel full, whether that is a backyard kennel with 4 or 5 dogs, or the big kennels with the big Iditarod guys and gals and whatnot. Brad, if we could step back a little bit, I want to talk about this canyoneering that you do with your dog. I was reading a post on REI.com about a class you guys taught. I guess it was in the spring, and you offered a course on this and first aid and whatnot. But I think our listeners would be really intrigued about hearing more about this whole sport that you do with the rappelling and the water and all that. Tell us about that, please.
Well, in Arizona, things get a little warmer down this way. But, even, a lot of people just think of Arizona as just being, all desert with, some little mountains here and there where it's a bit cooler. But hidden just everywhere through the state are tons and tons of what we call wet canyons. So these are kind of like slot canyons where they might be, 100 or a couple hundred feet deep, and at places only a few feet wide. And so they're these kind of like secluded, you almost feel like you're in a cave in some of these places. And it might be 105 degrees up on the surface, but you're down in the shade, swimming and, kind of scrambling over rocks. And we came across the company Ruckwear made a rappelling harness. And, we've just always been about just bringing dogs into everything that we do. And, so we got a couple of these rappelling harnesses and started bringing them along. It's a little scary for the dogs at first. They're definitely looking at you like, oh, I'm only doing this because I trust you. But after a while, they get like, okay, this is just part of the adventure, and they're loving it because for them it's all just rock hopping and swimming, and it's just fun play with them, and it's a great way to escape the heat of the desert.
That sounds awesome. I would love to do that, even if I didn't have a dog. I think it would be wonderful. Great fun for sure. So when you guys rappel down, you had mentioned it sort of like being in a cave. Is it? And pardon my misunderstanding, but is it? Are there trails and things underneath there, or is it just like you said, just hopping from rock to rock and kind of just doing some exploring down there?
A lot of times there's really sometimes where they get wider, you'll have kind of a little bit of beaten path here and there. But mainly they end up being so narrow that there's kind of just one way to go. Yeah. And so there's not really, when it floods, it just kind of tears everything through there. So there's not really trees or plants or anything like that. It's all just kind of like smooth rock. So it's pretty obvious. Yeah, just one way to go. Just head downstream.
And I guess the obvious question is, how do you get back up with the dog?
Oh yeah. So there's kind of 3 options. One is you park somewhere and this is the less fun part of it, is we have to like hike across the desert to the start of the canyon, and that can be pretty toasty. And you go down through it. Some canyons you'll go down through them, and then you'll kind of rappel back up and you leave your ropes in place. Okay. But a lot of times what you can do is, if you have a group, you can just bring 2 cars and park one car at the top and one at the bottom and just kind of shuttle. And that way you're not out dying in the heat the whole time trying to get back to your car.
That is fascinating. I'm definitely got to check out some videos of that for sure. If we could turn our discussion over to Sarah, before we jump into dry land and going over to Sweden and all that. Sarah, you had mentioned that you were a veterinarian. You got your start up in Minnesota and worked your way west. can you tell us a little bit about your practice? You said that you're involved with emergency medicine with pets. What's happening there? Of course, everybody knows that, you know, they visit you at the worst times possible, but can you tell us a little bit about what is so fascinating about emergency medicine with pets?
Sure. So the clinic I'm at, it's a 24-hour emergency-only clinic, so kind of very similar to what you imagine for like a human ER or human urgent care facility. Emergency, I think what I like about it is I like the instant gratification when they come in. Like, I can usually fix what's there versus in general practice. A lot of it is a lot of the managing the long-term conditions, which is very important and definitely a much-needed area of medicine. By emergency, it's just kind of fun to kind of help. I particularly enjoy like assisting with cases of trauma and in those situations where I feel like I'm kind of needed at that time, and I do enjoy that part. My other background in veterinary medicine is actually I have been a volunteer as a race veterinarian for the John Bear race in Minnesota. So I started volunteering during undergrad and vet school for that race, and then I've since gone back the last 4 years as a race veterinarian. And so and that's an entirely different realm of sled dog sports than the dryland world. But I very much enjoy that. It's sort of my annual pilgrimage to kind of go back and to kind of see where the distance dogs and those mushers and athletes.
And you guys are truly the unsung heroes of the mushing world, and in particular in my sport, in distance mushing. I don't know what we would do without you guys on the trail. You've helped out so many people over the years. I'm sure that that's quite rewarding for you, but when you go to the Bear Grease and races like that you know that are stretching over many days and many hundreds of miles, how do you focus in on the care that is needed at one checkpoint to make sure that continues down the trail for the next 200 or 300 miles?
Yep, no, absolutely. So a lot of it, we rely a lot on the mushers to kind of let us know what they're seeing on the trail. And I will forever say that mushers are my absolute favorite clients. Like, they know their dogs way better than almost anyone else I know. And we only see the dogs for a fraction of a second, for a little while they're at the checkpoint. And we can pick up on a lot of things. And, of course, some things are pretty obvious if there's, like, injuries or dehydration or any or oftentimes what we can see in sled dogs is what's called sled dog myopathy, where they can have pretty severe inflammation of their muscles, and that can be pretty crippling. So those are things that we can pick up pretty readily. But a lot of the more subtle things we may not notice. And so we kind of rely heavily on the mushers to kind of let us know what they're seeing. If the dog is just really not quite into it, or if they're slowing down, or if their behavior is just somewhat different on the trail. And so and if they point it out to us, then we'll kind of dive in more thoroughly and try to see if we can investigate and see where else the problem may be. But the big thing we look for is just making sure that they're eating well, drinking well, and that they're in good spirits. And that alone goes a long ways. In
my experience on the trails, we defer to your guys' experience. If you say, hey, this dog isn't doing well, we should drop him or whatever. Very few times, at least in my experience, do we get into arguments at 4 a.m. with the vets out on the trail, do we?
Yep, no, absolutely. So, no, we're here to help the mushers as well as the dogs.
So if we could now, Brad, let's switch over to the dryland sports that you guys are involved in. And as we mentioned at the top, you're going to be heading over and representing Team USA in the championships over in Sweden in a couple of months. You had mentioned also, Brad, that you just got involved with the sled sports, the winter sports. How did you guys decide on the classes that you guys are going to be involved in? Now that you have 5 dogs, I know that you guys are doing the Canicross, which is one dog, a running event, and then you're going to do bike joring and scootering. How did you guys decide on those classes to head over?
Well, the bike joring, before I even knew that these dryland things existed, I had been a mountain bike racer, and so that really came naturally to me. That's like my biggest passion of any of these sports is definitely the bike joring. But we were trying to hit like as many races as we could last year. And so we were from Arizona driving to Colorado, driving to Montana, driving to Washington. And, we'd be spending, sometimes up to, 20 hours to get some of these races one way. And then the race is over in 10 minutes. So, that's a lot of one-way driving for, tens of minutes of racing for a weekend. So we knew somebody selling a scooter, and I was like, I'll do that. That way I can, at least get a little more trail time out there. And then, again, come to discover that, I'm also pretty good at this too. And same with you, Sarah. Isn't that kind of why you got into bike touring? Your real passion is canicross.
Right. No, canicross is what I really enjoy. But bike touring, I think it was, again, it just I kind of followed Brad with mountain biking a fair bit. And then with both our dogs, we initially with the first two that we had, we started training them on the bikes a little bit. And it's just a lot of fun. And so. And
I think a lot of it is just like, we're already there, we have the dogs, we might as well do it. And then we're just finding that we're having a lot of fun. Like, I never really had any plan to get into sled racing. Like, people kept joking with me. Ed Streeper was joking with me. He's like, you'll be back for more dogs. You'll get into sled racing. And, I was trying to laugh it off, like, haha, yeah. And then, there I am last February and January out racing on a sled, and doing pretty well. And I don't know, it's just, I can't think of any one point where the things kind of change. It just kind of progresses. And like you say, you just kind of get a little deeper into it all the time. And
I think so much of it is just the dog's enthusiasm too. I think it's what kind of draws us into it more, where they're just having a blast. And it's just fun to kind of find ways to kind of mix it up a little bit and
just
take them
right
to enhance that part of it.
So, Brad, my next follow-up to that is you had mentioned that you were a mountain bike racer before all of the dog sports. What was the transition like from going to, a hardcore mountain bike racer? And I've seen plenty of YouTube videos of you guys just crushing it. How did it work for you to add a dog to the mix? I can imagine that you're used to pedal power on your own, and now here you have an entire other power source out in front of you. Can you tell us about that transition from purely you and the bike to now you and the bike and maybe a dog or two?
Well, actually, for me, there was a bit of a gap. I don't think I really raced for 10 years. Is that I started having problems with my knees, and it was frustrating because I still had the skills that I had worked so hard to develop, but I'd go out with friends and I could hold on all right, but if I pushed myself too much, I'd hurt my knees, and it really discouraged me about mountain biking. And I still rode from time to time, but I kind of lost my love for the sport a bit because I knew I could never be as fast as I used to be back when I was really racing hard. I still had the skills, but I just didn't have the ability to just go all out pedaling. And even once we got our first sled dog, I still didn't really understand that the dog would be doing that much. I didn't really have the experience around sled dogs that Sarah had. And she was saying that, they'll help you out and things like that. And I wasn't really imagining that they'd be working, they'd be putting down as much power or more than I was. And so once I started getting out and doing that a few times, I was just smiling and grinning the whole time because it felt like everything was back. I could get out and I could enjoy the high speeds. I could push my skills, and it just really brought my love back for mountain biking. I felt like it was a way that I could really get back into it. And so for me, bike touring really kind of brought me back to mountain biking. It gave me the motivation to get out and train more often because, it'd be so easy to pass riding one day, but then you look at the dog that you just know how bad she wants to go out. It's just a great motivation and a great way for me to have the sport be really, really exciting for me again.
I have to say, Brad and Sarah as well, I've done all sorts of sports in dog mushing, and I think that a two-dog bike tour is probably my favorite. Not only are you just screaming down the trail, but everything is kind of just clicking in unison. And, you're just rocking and rolling, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, for me, what I really enjoy one dog bike touring, and the reason for that is I tend to have a different choice of trail than most people that are bike touring. The races, they tend to be on kind of like gravel roads, or maybe they get, they narrow down to like ATV trails and that. But I mean, what I really, really have fun with is going on, like the Black Diamond narrow mountain bike trails. The trails that, they're listed as expert only even before you throw a dog on the front of your bike. And on trails like that, you just don't have room for two dogs side by side. And so that's
right.
why I really love just one dog bike touring. And, I post some videos, about it, and, everyone's just saying, oh, that's crazy, that's insane, like I'd never do that. But they help you on the technical trail. They're, by the time you're going into a tight turn, they're already running out of it, and they kind of pull you into and through the turn. Or if you've got some rocky ledge you're trying to climb up, they just kind of sprint up through it, and then you've got that bungee kind of yanking you up through the rocks. And I find that I can actually do a lot of technical riding with my dog that I couldn't do on my own. So even on like, the more extreme mountain biking, like it's still, the dog's still doing a lot and making it something more than it was.
That sounds awesome. I would love to go down some of those really technical trails with a dog. I've never had a chance to do that. So my next question is to either one of you guys, and it's more of a logistical question with traveling over to Sweden for the championship. Mm-hmm. I have already spoken to a few guys and gals on the team that are heading over with you, and most of them are running with one dog, whether they're doing Canicross or Bike Jour, et cetera. So my question to you guys is, at the top of the show, you had mentioned the classes that you're going to be entering in, and you're even an alternate in one or two of them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but does the rule state that the dog can only run in one class? And if that is the case, how are you going to fix that issue with multiple dogs in multiple classes? And then the second part of that question is, how are you going to travel with these multiple dogs to a place that's literally several thousand miles away by air?
Yep, no, both good questions. So the first question is, so the International Federation of Sled Dog Sports, dogs can actually run 2 classes per day, as long as the total mile distance is less than 12 miles. So, yep, and unfortunately, they're actually on different days too. So we're actually bringing 2 dogs over. So we're bringing Lyra and Petra are the 2 dogs we'll be bringing over. And so Brad will be doing Bike Jour with Lyra, and I'll be doing Bike Jour with Petra. And then he'll be doing the 2-dog scooter with both of them. And then, of course, should something happen that I'm an alternate for Canicross, and then should something occur that I'm up to the podium for that, then I'll be doing Canicross with Lyra. So we're good to go there. But as far as traveling, it is a little tricky. Fortunately, we were able to find a direct flight from Los Angeles over to Stockholm, and we're flying Scandinavian Airlines, which they're pretty accommodating. And based on my conversations with them, and so we're able to kind of get our flights booked and kind of get their travel situated. One
thing that we were really worried about at the beginning is that it's really hard to fly dogs out of Phoenix, which is the closest city to us. So we're having to drive to LA, because if the temperature is over 85 degrees, I think it is.
Right. Depending on the airline.
Yeah, if it's over 85 degrees, they won't load dogs onto the plane. And even in October, it can it'll be well over that, and then if we try and do a morning flight and the flight gets delayed, then suddenly we're on the plane and the dogs aren't. So we do have to drive over to Los Angeles, but fortunately it's not more than, how many hours?
Yeah, so our flight's only less than 11 hours. I think it's 10 hours and 45 minutes.
So
it's probably a closer amount of time in distance driving to LA from where you're at to the amount of time you're on the plane. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's about a 7-hour drive from here to LA. So exactly.
Guys, we have just a few minutes. Totally fascinated with your guys' life with your sled dogs, and I really enjoyed all of the extra stuff that you do with your dogs. What an awesome story. Guys, I typically ask the same question to all of my guests, and I would like for both of you guys to answer it if you could. My question is, if somebody is coming up to you that wants to get involved with this sport, whether they want to do, one dog canicross or 4-dog sprint, what would you tell them as that first piece of advice? Sarah, if you could first, what is your answer?
Yeah, so I think the first question would be to decide, how serious do you want to get into this? And then what do you want to do more recreationally, or do you want to do more competitively? And that will kind of help guide guide how you might want to pursue getting a dog for the sports. There's a lot of wonderful dogs out there that we've seen that are awesome doing it recreationally. They can get through through rescue organizations or shelters. But if you're looking for a really competitive dog, your best bet is to talk with people that are already involved with the sports, talk with kennels, talk with people that raise and work with these dogs to try to help kind of guide you into finding your dog. So otherwise, apart from that, just kind of keep up with your own skills as well, like whether it's bike joring or running or ski joring even, just try to maintain your own fitness to be able to keep up with your dog on the trail.
If someone told me they were getting into the sport, I think I'd begin by, asking them a lot of questions, because there's so many different ways you can go with it. I mean, bike joring can be something that's, just a little bit past, walking with your dog to, flying down single track trails. But, and I hadn't even thought of it until Sarah said it, but yeah, so much of it is, it's a team sport. So it's not just, focusing on the dog itself. If you really want to get into it, it's not just getting a really good dog or not just being a really good biker yourself. It's you have to devote it to be a team thing.
Great advice for sure. I really appreciate that. And you hear such wide comments from all of you guys, whether you're, it's guests that are doing Iditarod all the way down to that 1-dog canicrosser. It's so interesting to hear everybody's advice. Guys, I know you had mentioned before we started recording that you're going to do some social media and things before you guys head over so people can follow you along and see pictures and whatnot. But is there a place to find you now? Are you guys on Facebook? Do you have a website? Anything like that you would like to share?
Yeah, we're both on Facebook, and we're really regularly posting videos. Yeah, I'd say, right now on, especially anybody in the Western U.S., Bike Joring Western USA is a group I set up last year for people looking to get into bike joring in the Western United States. Especially right now, I've actually got a pretty good video of a crash while I was bike joring. Everything was fine, but it made for a pretty good video. So I say check that out, Bike Joring Western USA group on Facebook.
No, I'll put a little plug-in for Canicross USA, which is sort of an organization that there's a parent organization, and then each region and or state kind of has their own local chapter. And so I'm kind of the administrator for Canicross USA Arizona's page, and so on Facebook.
All right. I will share both of those sites on your guys' show page when this show goes live. So my last request from you guys, is there anyone you would like to thank? Do you have any sponsors, any particular friends or fans, or anybody you'd like to give a shout out to here on your show?
Really, I just want to give a shout out to every musher I've met. The mushing community is so welcoming and friendly and just excited. Again, when I showed up for my first race, they just really welcomed me in. And I know that there's people that I've yet to meet that are going to be just as helpful.
To follow up with that, no, definitely want to thank the mushing community and sled dog world. Again, absolutely welcoming and a wealth of information, and kind of definitely opened the doors up for us. Of course, want to thank Ed Streeper again for kind of helping us get started, and then recently, our most recent dog we actually got from Ken and Lori Cheswick, so definitely want to give a shout out to them too and thank them. But otherwise, friends and family, of course. My coworkers have been wonderfully supportive, and they're definitely very excited to hear how things are going. And it's always, every time I show up to work, I was asking about any new adventures or training strategies, and it's just been a lot of fun, and family too. Want one of my sisters is considering joining us to be a spectator over there, and we'll see if she can make it happen logistically. And I know Brad's parents were kind of thinking of joining us too to spectate and kind of come along. So big thank you to a family as well.
On behalf of my guests today, Brad and Sarah Kassing, they're going to be heading over to Sweden in a couple of months to represent Team USA in the Dryland Championships. It was a pleasure speaking to you guys. Good luck in Sweden, and I wish you all the best. And with that, thank you very much for listening to Mushing Radio. Be sure to check us out over on dogworksradio.com. And we will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From DogWorks Radio, this is Mushing Radio. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you'll see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Alex Stein and Robert Forto. Our producer is Robert Forto, created for DogWorks Radio. Did you know that Alaska Dog Works trains service dogs for those in need throughout North America? Each and every service dog that is trained through the Lead Dog Service Dog Program and Michelle Forto and her team has an individual training plan. We train for autistic, mobility, psychiatric, and PTSD for our soldiers for service work. If you know of someone that may need a service dog, please take a moment and check out Alaska Dog Works on social media and at alaskadogworks.com.